Hey folks, I'm just headed to work. I figured I'm going to talk a little bit about code. I don't have topics for pending questions, and I didn't see anything on experienced devs that I didn't feel like I've already talked about 100 times, so we'll talk a little bit about code today. I will start this video off by saying, for the first time in 13 years, 15 if you include my internships, but for the first time in 13 years, I officially received a promotion, which is super cool. I've never actually, in my entire career, received a promotion. That doesn't mean that I haven't gained more responsibilities or changed my compensation, that kind of thing, but I have never actually formally received a promotion. This morning was the first time ever, so pretty cool, pretty excited about that. For context, that is, for me, it took me 5 years at Microsoft to go from level 65 to 66. I feel like I'm not complaining about being promoted. I feel like that took significantly longer than I was expecting. I changed managers 3 times across 3 organizations. Well, sorry, 2 organizations, but one of them was reorged in the middle there. So I know that when people change managers, the goal is supposed to be that you're not resetting your progress, but I 100% feel like every time I switched managers, I reset my progress. Which sucks, but is what it is. So today's a good day, good way to start the week. Happy about that. Let's talk code, though. I've been for Brand Ghost. So Brand Ghost, for folks that don't know, Brand Ghost is the social media and cross-posting platform that I'm building, but it's built in .net. I program basically everything in C#. It's my favorite thing to code in. I'm just very, very comfortable in it, so if I have to build anything, then using C# is just... It's kind of like... I don't know a good way to come up with an example of this, but I am so comfortable using C# that if I had to go code in some new territory, that even if C# was absolutely not the good language choice, I could still be more effective than learning a new language to do it. So it's not that I don't know other languages, it's just like it's just far more efficient for me to stay with C#. So anyway, that's what I program in, and over the past little bit, so past few weeks, I guess, especially playing with AI tools and stuff and spinning up some new small applications to play around with, I found myself getting to a point where, especially if you are a C# developer, but I'm sure this is, comes up in other languages as well, but if you're familiar with the concept of dependency injection, and there's dependency injection frameworks, this is something that all of these things end up having to use, because if they are web services, they're using ASP.NET Core. If you're using, I wanted to play around with semantic kernel again, and semantic kernel doesn't use ASP.NET Core, but it uses the service collection building and all of that kind of stuff. So it's all like wired up to work with Microsoft's dependency injection framework. And so a couple things going on for me. One is that, like, over the past few weeks, maybe it's been a couple months now, I've spent a lot of time transitioning from a dependency injection framework called AutoFac, which is something that I used for years just out of comfort. And at the time, it was far more advanced than Microsoft's. But Microsoft's dependency injection framework has since caught up, and it's basically the standard. So it's gotten to the point where I was like kind of fighting against it. So I switched over to using the built-in stuff. But I'm at this point, especially with a bunch of like little side AI projects and stuff, where they're all setting up dependency injection and they're all starting to grow a little bit. And I'm like, there's some things that I cannot stand with the Microsoft dependency injection framework. Not because that it like sucks or it has a problem, but like sort of the recommended patterns that everyone follows, I just do not agree with. One of them primarily, and that pattern is essentially that as you are adding new parts to your application, so you're adding a new feature, you're building out new parts of the code base, what you need to do to make your stuff work with dependency injection is that every new class you make, you have to go add that class onto the dependency container so that it can be automatically resolved. So the reason that this sucks is that every time I write some code, I have to go back to like basically a central spot in my application and add a new line that says go register this thing. And I add a lot of stuff. I keep adding all these lines. But this is just like an accepted pattern, and I don't understand why. It drives me nuts. And then so people go, hey, well, you don't want all this stuff sitting in your entry point. It's like, it's chaotic. You get hundreds or thousands of lines of just registering dependencies. So people group these things up into extension methods, and then they can say like collection dot add cool feature dependencies, and that calls an extension method where a bunch of that stuff gets registered. Cool. The problem is that like it just moves the problem. You still have this big list of dependencies, so you're either adding it to one list or another list, but these files keep growing. And like I said, I just can't stand it. And it's not that it's wrong, and I never want to come across in a video like I am telling people that something is, 100% right or 100% wrong. It's just not the way that I program. So I find myself fighting against it. So especially with these AI tools kind of scaffolding out some of these really simple, applications that are getting built. Like if I want to keep building on these, I don't like the patterns that are starting to emerge. And like I said, the one common pattern is like how all these dependencies are being registered on this dependency container. So I said, you know what? Brand Ghost is mature at this point. It's a plugin. I build a lot of plugin-based applications. So Brand Ghost is entirely a plugin-based architecture. The entry point's very, very light. And I said, I'm sick of it. So I pulled out a bunch of the pieces for Brand Ghost, which is an ASP.NET Core application. I pulled a bunch of that code out into a new library. And the idea behind that library is that I can sort of have a generic way to go sort of scaffold the dependencies and new applications I make. Now, it's very opinionated because it's following my opinion. The goal is not to go make the most robust, do it any way you want. It's not. It's here's a way that I do it. If you like the way that I code too, then like you can take advantage of this. So it's a open source package that's called Needlr, kind of like playing on the dependency injection part. It's got a little stupid logo that's a little syringe, and it's got a happy face. It's funny. So I've been building out Needlr, and like I said, oh my god, buddy. Cannot drive behind people that are that stupid. Holy crap. This guy's hitting the brakes to switch lanes between me and a car. There's no one in front of him. He's trying to get between me and the car in front of me. And there's no space. But he's like hitting his brakes so that he can merge over. There's not even an exit coming up. Like there's literally no reason to do that. So Needlr basically started off was me copying and pasting a bunch of Brand Ghost code over. And then trimming out the pieces that are like very Brand Ghost specific, which is not a lot. right? Because this is just the part that wires up my lightweight entry point to all of these plugins. So there's only a handful of things that, like, over time as I'm building Brand Ghost, I'm like, there's not really a good spot for this. Like, I don't have a good plugin, or it's going to be a bit of a hack, but this is like the easiest spot to make it work, and it works perfectly, so let me just do it. There's a handful of things like that, like 5 to 10 kind of smallish things. So what I did was build out Needlr by copying and pasting that code over, starting to remove those things, and then while I'm doing that, kind of going like, is there a way that I can see, like, as I'm doing this, that makes it a little bit more generic, where I can see a way to get that thing hooked up? For most of those things, the answer was no. But that's okay. So I built this framework out. I put a bunch of tiny little sample applications together, like building a console application. And it's cool because, like, you can build an ASP.NET Core application and it's 2 lines long. And you might say, well, yeah, like the sample application, like the weather one that comes with, the sample template project, it's only a couple of lines long too. So, like, hey, Nick, that's not really much better. But the point is that if you wanted to keep adding more to that weather one, you have to keep adding extra lines to go register the dependencies. On mine, you don't. You just add the new routes. You just add new things. You don't have to go back to the dependency container to register stuff. So there's a handful of, like, I don't know, like maybe 5 applications. And then had that working, started putting some tests together. Once I had the basics in place, I used Claude and Copilot a little bit. I'll have some YouTube videos coming out this week on my main channel, which is Dev Leader, that show that. They were done last week, but I think my editor he has some family stuff going on, so I think he has like 7 videos to edit for me right now, so that's okay. So I'll have some videos on that coming out this week. But then what I had to do, now that I'm like, okay, Needlr is kind of shaping up, like it looks like it's working the way I want, I need to go reintegrate it into Brand Ghost, right? Because all that I did, I told you this already, I just copied the code out of Brand Ghost into Needlr. Now that it's been copied out, I need to go basically remove the code from Brand Ghost and call Needlr, because Needlr has already done the work. So this is where it kind of put things to the test, because I'm like, okay, I got to make it work. And I missed a ton of stuff. So I told you, like 5 to 10 things, like, yeah, and I basically had to go find a way to make all of those work. So it was good, though, because once I had the package in place and I could see the limitations, because I'm trying to reintegrate it, that's where I could say, hey, now that I see both sides, like the consumer of it and sort of as the package maintainer, defining the APIs for it, that's where I could say, hey, I actually have a better idea for how I want to call this, because that mindset I find is like super valuable when you're defining APIs. So for example, if you are on the producing side of the API, you might sit there and go, oh, like, I bet you it would feel good to call this API this way, or like, these are the parameters I need. So if someone gives me these parameters, like, this API will work. But if you put a whole bunch of that together, you might find that when you go to start calling those things, you're like, why does this feel kind of shitty? Like, it just doesn't really flow that well. And so I thought it was super helpful to, like, have the foundation in place and then see these opportunities to go improve it. So there'd be times where, like, in Brand Ghost, I started calling into Needlr to set it up, and then I'm like, I had to go write like some pretty ugly code, even though Needlr would support it. I'm like, this code, like, kind of sucks. But then I'm like, wait a second, like, I own both sides of this, so I can go back to Needlr. I can add some, like, fluent builder syntax. I'm not sure, for folks that aren't really familiar with that, it lets you write code that kind of looks like you're chaining some method calls together, so it starts to read almost like a sentence. So like you have a builder so you make a new builder, and then you say like using these pieces, using those pieces, configured this way, without that, and it kind of reads like a sentence, like I said, and then at the end you say build, and then it makes you the thing that you wanted. If you're familiar with LINQ inside of C#, LINQ is also like fluent syntax, where you can say like, I have something and I want to select these things where these conditions are met, and then I want to order them by something, and then I want to call toArray on it to make it an array. That LINQ syntax, what is this van doing? Swerving all over, my goodness. That LINQ syntax is like fluent, like builder syntax. So Needlr has a bunch of that, and by reintegrating it into Brand Ghost, I found some more opportunities to clean that up. And then, yeah, I think at the end of the day yesterday, I finally had like the green light on everything. It's kind of scary because there's like 1,500 tests in Brand Ghost. There's a lot of test coverage. And when you're switching the entire dependency injection like type scanning system and registration system, it's supposed to be the same, right? That's how it started. But technically I'm replacing it. I'm like, I'm not hopeful this is all going to pass on the first try. And some parts did work first try. I think the last gaps I had were, one was ridiculous. So any tests that I had that were starting up the application, not pieces of it, but like actually running the application, it was crashing on startup. And I'm like, I can't understand why. So as I'm digging into it, we have integration with Discord, because it's a social media posting platform, so we can post messages to Discord. And it kept saying like this thing from Discord is trying to be registered. And I'm like, that's not supposed to be registered. And then I go to the code, and it literally has the attribute that I made that says don't register. Like, it has that on the class. And I'm like, what the heck's going on here? How do, thousands of classes all work perfectly, and this one class doesn't? Like, what the heck is going on here? And it turns out the most ridiculous coincidence is that I have an attribute that says do not auto-register. Do not auto-register. And Discord has one built in for whatever library I'm using that's called don't auto-register. So I had accidentally replaced it with don't auto-register instead of do not. So Needlr was trying to automatically register it. So yeah, that was a pretty stupid, like, one character typo. And it only affected Discord because that's the only spot in the code base that has a library that has a very, very similar attribute. So once that was out of the way, the only other problem was one of those things that I set on my list of like 5 to 10 things that was left over. And what was happening was that the routes of the application were being registered twice. And you can't do that in ASP.NET Core. It will throw an exception. So basically, right on startup, it was like, hey, you've already registered this route. For like the first set of routes, it was doing it again. So I just had to add another simple exclusion into the registration, and it cleaned everything up. But that was surfacing in a really weird way in the tests, because it went from being like, not authenticated, but it's originally because the routes weren't even being registered. Then it was a 500 because now the app is crashing on startup. Or it's having an error on startup, it's running, but then the routes are throwing exceptions. So anyway, kind of a bit of a chaotic thing to have 1,500 tests and just hope that they all work. But most of them did. Honestly, it was the only ones that weren't really working were the ones that started up the core application. I mean, arguably some of the most important ones, but pretty cool. There's architecture tests in place. So they do things like checking that my types are registered the way I expect. There's some things like the job framework. I use Quartz for that. Quartz is my preferred job scheduling framework in .NET. So I have to make sure that those types are registered properly, a bunch of stuff like that. But these architecture tests, you can hook them up to your dependency container. They'll scan for types as well, and then make sure that things are organized in a good way. So those all worked pretty quick in the beginning, which is great. That's a pretty good indicator for me that, like, at a high level, things are going to work. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but if those tests are already failing, then I should expect a lot of really weird side effects in the other tests. We got to get over one more lane. How are we going to do that? Oh. Just like that. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna do my live stream tonight. If you're watching this will be already probably Wednesday or something when I post this, maybe Thursday. It's Monday right now. My live stream tonight, I'm gonna code live and we're gonna play with Needlr a little bit. I didn't over the weekend. I took Friday off. I did a month of on-call. I was on call for a month, and then I had some other work stuff come up, and my boss was like, "Hey, like, take a day, take two. I might do a short week again this week, just to catch up a little bit more." I have a feeling I'm gonna go on call very briefly next week. We'll see. Anyway, I took Friday off. It was just like I'm playing video games on Friday and playing video games a lot on Saturday. And I remember it was like Friday night, and I'm like, honestly, I'm just like a little bit too burnt out to write a newsletter. But I was thinking, because like it's a kind of a cascading thing, right? It's a chain of events. If I don't write my newsletter, then I don't have my live stream topic. So when I was committing to not writing a newsletter for this past Saturday, I said, you got to make sure you have a live stream topic though. And I said, hey, like, we haven't coded live in a little while. Like, let's do that. So my plan for this live stream, I want to do this more, but because we did it on a couple live streams ago, I want to start the live stream off asking AI to build us something, and then we can revisit it at the end of the stream. So I want to. It's funny because if you watch the live stream tonight and then you watch this video, they'll be out of order. But I want to ask, probably use Claude Code. We'll see if Claude Code can build a simple RAG solution. All that I would like to do is, I'm practicing my prompt right now. I want to build a simple RAG solution, probably using Postgres or SQLite. To be honest, I don't really care. I'll have to check what C# packages are available. But let's say Postgres for now, because I'm pretty sure there's PG, Vector, NuGet package. But I want it to use semantic kernel. I want it to use Postgres. And I want to build a RAG engine, because I haven't yet built like locally like a mini RAG framework. So I wanted to go through, and I have a wiki, I guess you'd call it. It's just a bunch of markdown files for game content. So for those of you that know, I have this role-playing game that I've been putting together for like the past 20 years, but a few years ago I actually started trying to put some content together for the game world, and I haven't touched it in like since 2022 or something. And then I recently just kind of moved the repository around, and I said, hey, like maybe I can get AI to help generate some stories and stuff for me. And just trying to build out the lore, right? So it's kind of like if I don't dedicate time to it, it will never get done. But I might be able to have AI crank out a bunch of stuff, and then I can review it and be like, this story is awesome, this story sucks. Like, make this canon, make this, just cut it out, whatever. I can have it review timelines and stuff. So I wanted to use or build a little RAG system that would go through the markdown files and essentially index them, and then that way I can use semantic kernel or whatever. Like I can write C# code that talks to semantic kernel and says, like, tell me about this game world, like tell me something about this period of time, and it will have indexed the markdown files, and then like the LLM will be able to respond back to me in a way that kind of knows about the game world. And then periodically I'll have to ask it like a good way to do this, but like how do I regenerate the indices, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'll ask Claude to do that. Conceptually, that one's not too hard. I think there's a bunch of like tuning to make that kind of stuff better, right? Like how big are the chunks? Like, is there other metadata that goes along with the chunks? I think honestly that's probably the trickiest part, but like, or like how much do you clean up the text before you dump it into the vectorization, that kind of stuff. So we'll see, but I think the nice part is that I should be able to like rerun it and rebuild the index, so it's not like if I index it once and then I change my mind about how to index it, the whole thing's broken. So we'll have AI start that off, and then I'll probably spend the hour on stream with Needlr just building some really simple stuff just to show people. Like, okay, we could do WPF, we could do ASP.NET. ASP.NET's probably the most obvious, because if we want to add more routes and stuff, I can demonstrate just adding a little new plugin and then not having to wire stuff up to the dependency container. So we'll see. I might ask the audience members to what they want to build, but that's the plan. I don't like skipping the newsletter. That's an important thing to me. But also my mental health is important too. So I've done over 100 issues, and I've only taken a couple breaks. One of my breaks was for my wedding. I've written newsletter articles like while I'm in Hawaii and stuff. So yeah, I don't take it lightly, but that way when it comes up, I'm pretty honest with myself if I need it. And I think I needed it. So that's mostly it. Just getting to work here. Oh. This person is making a left turn from not the turning lane, which is very interesting, but that's okay. And then I get to hopefully have some good conversations today. I know when my manager was talking to me, he was very excited. I think as managers, when we're able to deliver good news to people, that like is a really feel-good moment. We can offer all the guidance and structure and push people in the directions and try to set them up on projects, and but at the end of the day, it's like it's all of their hard work, right? All of their hard work, and it feels good to be able to, I don't know, like kind of present people something that it's a little bit more quantitative around how much, their impact has been recognized. So hopefully we'll start the week off on a positive note that way. Thanks for watching, folks. If you have questions that you want answered, leave them below in the comments. You can go to codecommute.com. You can submit questions anonymously that way. And then I've mentioned a couple of YouTube channels already, but I have DevLeader, which is my main channel. That's where I have C#, .NET, and AI programming tutorials. Check that out. I have the DevLeader podcast. That's where the live stream is going to be that I mentioned, but there's also a podcast there where I interview other software engineers. You can hear about their career journeys because there's a lot of really cool stuff that people have done, and not every journey looks the same, which brings us to the last channel, which is DevLeader Path to Tech, especially if you're just getting started or you're switching careers. You can check out that channel for resume reviews, and I'll have some other content related to getting into the tech industry. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.